The studio was charged with anticipation. Cameras rolled, lights flared, and the audience leaned in as the latest episode of a high-profile national talk show began. The topic: the future of American values. The guest list alone had caused iMedia star Caroline Leavitt, a fiery young conservative voice known for her no-holds-barred commentary, and Denzel Washington, the legendary actor turned quiet public intellectual. He wasn't there as a celebrity, he was there as a citizen. The host welcomed them with a polished smile, setting the stage for what was expected to be a civil, if spirited, exchange. Leavitt, clad in a sharp red suit, looked ready for combat, her eyes locked onto Denzel with a sharpness that preceded the first word. Denzel sat in contrast, serene, shoulders relaxed, eyes steady. He spoke first, calmly, about humility, service, family, about legacy. His voice carried weight, not volume. Leavitt countered quickly, a rhetoric blazing. She railed against government overreach, woke hysteria, and the erosion of traditional values. Her tone was high-octane, her arguments practiced. Then came the shift. Denzel, still calm, spoke of systemic inequality, education, housing. These things didn't arise out of thin air, he said. Leavitt scoffed audibly. She turned toward him fully and snapped, "Oh please, see broken bar, just sit down, boy." The air vanished from the room. For a moment, there was only silence, a collective stillness, as if time itself paused. The audience stared. The host blinked, fumbling his cards. A producer stepped forward from the wings, unsure whether to cut to commercial. Denzel didn't flinch. His jaw clenched, but his gaze remained calm, not angry or disappointed. Then, with measured precision, he leaned forward and spoke. "You don't get to call me a boy, Miss Leavitt," he said. "That word carries chains, it carries whips, it carries graves." The audience gasped. Caroline tried to wave it off, rolling her eyes, but the crowd had already begun to shift. Murmurs, groans, and something else. An awakening. Denzel didn't trace his voice. "I've been called worse by men who feared less," he continued, "but I stand here free on the shoulders of those who never had the chance to respond." The host stammered, trying to change course. "Let's return to the Policia." But Denzel wasn't done. Leavitt interrupted, trying to reframe. "It's just an expression," she said. "It's Southern." "I didn't mean it like that," a voice from the back cut through. "It's 2025. Denzel tilted his head gently. "I was raised to forgive, but never to forget," he said. "And when someone shows you who they are, a broken bar, believe them." The room froze. The host visibly rattled. Leavitt snapped back, "You can't twist my words into some racial thing. This is why people hate the left. Everything becomes about feelings." Denzel paused, and then, with a soft, knowing smile, "Strength isn't how loud you talk, it's how much pain you can carry and still show grace." The audience erupted in applause. Backstage, producers scrambled. In the control room, damage control. But on stage, the storm was still swirling. "You want to act like you're some saint because you made movies. Caroline's bad. This isn't Hollywood. This is real life." Denzel didn't blink. "You're right," he said. "In Hollywood, we act. But on this stage, a broken bar we reveal." He paused, just long enough for the weight to settle. "And what you've revealed in 5 words, a broken bar, is the sickness still buried in the soil of this country." Caroline opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her certainty had dissolved. She looked to the host for rescue, and none came. Then Denzel turned to the camera, speaking not to her, but to the nation. "I've walked through neighborhoods where hope was buried decades ago. I've spoken to men behind bars, forgotten by the world. I buried friends whose only crime was being born black and bold." He breathed in slowly. "And I'm telling you now, this kind of poison, polite or not, has no place in our democracy." The host rushed to wrap. "Final thoughts?" he asked, voice thin. Caroline tried one last pivot. "Maybe I was a little blunt," she said, forcing a smile. "But I came here to talk policy, not feelings." Denzel turned slowly toward her. "You can't make policy without humanity," he said. "And if you leave your conscience at the door or a broken bar, don't expect history to leave the door open for you." Thunderous applause. The host stood speechless. Caroline sat still, deflated. Denzel nodded politely, thanked the host, and walked off stage with quiet dignity. The camera followed him until the curtain swallowed him whole. The silence that followed was louder than any standing ovation. Across the country, living rooms were still. Viewers sat back, phones buzzing. Friends called friends. "Did you see that?" By morning, headlines screamed, "Leavitt ignites firestorm with racial slur to Denzel Washington. Washington responds with unmatched grace." Sit down boy trends worldwide. 12 million views by breakfast. Celebrities, athletes, civil rights leaders, former presidents saw everyone had something to say. Some defended Caroline, most didn't. On a conservative podcast later that day, Leavitt doubled down. "He played the race card," she said. "They're smearing me because I'm a strong woman." But the tide had turned. Even some conservative commentators weren't buying it. "It's not a gaffe," one veteran pundit said. "It's a slap in the face." The network scrambled. The talk show issued a formal statement condemning racism. The host, visibly shaken, addressed the moment on Instagram Live. That wasn't scripted, it wasn't a stunt. Denzel Washington showed integrity we all could learn from. "I failed to stop something ugly from unfolding, but maybe broken bar we can learn from it." Denzel's phone was flooded. Calls from spiritual leaders, activists, former critics, supporters. He released a brief statement. "I will always speak truth with dignity. Hate has no home in my heart or in this country." Meanwhile, Leavitt's team tried to scrub the internet, but the internet remembers. Old interviews, questionable tweets, resurfaced. A narrative was forming, and it wasn't hers anymore. By Thursday, the pressure was undeniable. Her team drafted an apology, but in a leaked memo, she refused. "I'm not apologizing to a millionaire actor who twisted my words," she wrote. The fallout was swift. Protests greeted her next event. Signs read, "You don't say a boy to our heroes. Respect isn't partisan." Denzel appeared briefly at a charity event. Asked if he'd meet with her, he replied, "Forgiveness doesn't require conversation, it requires recognition. I don't need her to like me, I just need her to see." The clip, by then, had taken on a life of its own. Teachers showed it in classrooms. Churches played it in sermons. A civil rights organization awarded Denzel their annual Courage Civility honor. And on a morning show, a journalist said it plainly, this wasn't about politics, it was about character. And Denzel Washington showed us what that still means. The storm hadn't passed, it had only grown. By Friday, Caroline Leavitt's name was no longer trending up, it was entrenched. The clip had crossed the usual political barriers. This wasn't just a media moment, it was a national mirror. And what people saw in her, what she refused to see in herself, was echoing everywhere. Pressure intensified. Sponsors began to pull out. A major university rescinded her upcoming speaking invitation. Even within her own party, cracks appeared. A few higher-ranking GOP members called her privately, urging her to apologize, and not for optics, but because, as one senator put it, "You're undoing years of strategic outreach in 24 hours." Still, Caroline doubled down. She launched a defensive media blitz, appearing on friendly networks with carefully curated interviewers. "I will not be silenced," she insisted. "I will not apologize for being blunt." She tried to steer the conversation back to crime, taxes, and the border. But every clip circled back to one line, "Just sit down, boy." The words had branded her. Memes flooded the internet. Edits juxtaposed her outburst with images from the civil rights movement. Others layered Denzel's quiet response over video of Dr. King, Malcolm X, and John Lewis. This wasn't politics anymore, it was cultural memory, a reckoning. And Caroline, she was still trapped in the first 5 seconds of her defense. That Sunday, Denzel made his first extended public appearance since the broadcast. It was at a church in Atlanta, Ebenezer Baptist. He didn't speak as an actor. He stood in the same pulpit where Martin Luther King Jr. once thundered truths into the bones of America. The sanctuary was packed. Cameras lined the back. He wore no suit, just a dark sweater, open collar, and a quiet fire in his eyes. "I didn't come here to shame anyone," he began. "I came to speak peace to the wounded, a broken bar, and warning to the hard-hearted." He paused. The silence hung heavy, sacred. "There's a sickness in our soil, and sometimes it grows up in places dressed in patriotism, in power, in polished words. But we see it, we know the scent of it. Some of us were born in its shadow. He looked toward the stained glass windows glowing with morning light. If I had responded with rage, he continued, they would have said, AC, he's angry, he's dangerous. If I'd walked off, they'd say I was weak. So I stayed. I spoke. I didn't speak for applause. I spoke for every man who's ever been called a boy and told to stay small. The crowd stood as one, some in tears, others in fists to the chest silence. He stepped down from the pulpit and disappeared into a private prayer room. That clip would surpass 50 million views in 3 days. Meanwhile, Caroline's world began to cave in from the inside. Leaked emails showed her team panicking. One senior advisor begged her to take a listening tour to visit black communities, to speak with clergy, to show humility. Caroline scoffed. I don't grovel, she wrote back, I lead. Then came the second shoe. A former staffer stepped forward. She'd been with Caroline's campaign since the beginning. Young, black, and until now, silent. In a TikTok that went instantly viral, she said, Caroline didn't just say the quiet part out loud, she lives it. She recounted moments, saw jokes at her expense, sudden exclusions, microaggressions that metastasized into something louder that day on air. What she said to Denzel, a broken bar she said to me, just without the cameras. Within 24 hours, 4 more former staffers came forward. The internet did the rest. Compilations flooded timelines. Clips of Caroline smirking when race was mentioned, deflecting systemic issues with eye rolls. One moment resurfaced from a 2022 debate where she referred to racial justice protests as urban tantrums. It hadn't made waves then. It did now. By Tuesday, even some conservative think tanks issued statements distancing themselves. Privately, prominent right-wing figures admitted she was becoming a liability. She can't be defended without damage, one strategist confessed on a hot mic. That night, Denzel was honored as a private event by the NAACP. But this time, the speech wasn't his. The Reverend Al Sharpton took the stage. When a man responds to hate without hatred, when he absorbs venom and returns it with vision, that's not Hollywood, that's humanity. Then, a surprise guest took the mic. Ava DuVernay. What we saw last week wasn't a political debate, it was a history lesson. Caroline Leavitt exposed what's still broken. Denzel Washington reminded us how we heal. By Thursday, the talk show network made its move. In a rare decision, they pulled the full episode from streaming and replaced it with a 10-minute editorial. The host, visibly worn, stared into the camera. We didn't stop the moment. We failed live. But we are learning. We are listening. And we will not be neutral in the face of dehumanization. They committed to mandatory anti-racism training for all on-air talent and producers. Behind closed doors, Caroline was told her next scheduled national appearance had been dropped. Another booking quietly cancelled her. Then a third. Still, she refused to back down. Until the protest. It was a town hall in Ohio. Her team insisted she should stay off stage. She didn't listen. As she walked up to the podium, dozens of attendees silently turned their backs. A sea of people, black, white, young, old, standing in silence, arms folded, not shouting, not chanting, just turning away. And for the first time via broken bar, Caroline hesitated. Her voice cracked. I came here to speak the truth, she started, but the words bounced back at her like echoes in a canyon. The silence was too loud. Someone held up a single sign in the front row. Boy is not just a word. She stopped reading. Her mouth opened, closed, and then, for the first time since the broadcast, she said something no one expected. A broken bar didn't understand. It wasn't an apology, not yet, but it was the first tear in the wall. That night, Denzel didn't respond. He simply posted an image. No caption, just the sign. Boy is not just a word. Below it, millions of hearts. A nation still watching, still learning. And the reckoning continued.